All right, grown-ups, it's just our time. I love the babies, but to help you, I gotta speak my mind. This segment's here to help you grow with book reviews, lessons, and things you'll be glad to know. If your little one's restless or looking to play, send them to my other playlist. The read-alouds there will brighten their day. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Teacher Lady Show. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Teacher Lady Speaks. I'm Miss Erica, the Teacher Lady, your fairy godparent when it comes to sharing joyful stories and growing young minds. Now, every single week on the Teacher Lady Show, we tackle a different topic. And this week's topic is all about honesty and integrity. I am here to help you as the parent raise children who have a bit more integrity and who finally tell the truth, okay? And of course, we're using picture books to be able to do so. On Monday, we had 2 interactive read-alouds on the Teacher Lady Reads playlist. We had Jamaica's Find, as well as The Empty Pot. On Wednesday, we had the Behind the Book reviews where I let you know as the parents or guardians, how do you use these books as resources to have a more robust conversation with your little one? And then today on Friday, we wrap it all up with this episode of the Teacher Lady Speaks, a crash course into raising children who have a bit more honesty and integrity. Okay, you ready? Let's grow. Explaining honesty or defining the topic for a child. When it comes to honesty, really, it's based in trust. And so if I had to explain that concept, I would use stories. I would use The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I would use the read alouds from this week, because what you want your child to understand is what happens when they do lie. Because lying is what breaks the trust that we need to have with and for each other. And so sitting down with them and explaining why we tell the truth, why it is the best option for them to be honest with you and what that does for your relationship is going to be how you would approach defining that topic for a child. Okay. Now, The Boy Who Cried Wolf is a great example because he was lying. And then when it was time to tell the truth, when he was telling the truth, nobody believed him because he had built this reputation of being a liar. And so messages like that help children to understand the importance and the value of telling the truth. Let's keep growing. So every single week, we compare 2 states to figure out what your child might be learning in terms of the topic. Okay, so we look at the curriculum in the state of California and the state of Texas to see, is there anything in the curriculum that might talk about the topic at hand? And so in terms of the state of California, when it comes to the topic of honesty and integrity, in California, those are embedded throughout the health education standards and transformative social emotional learning competencies. It also shines through the character education principles across grades K through 6. Students are expected to identify emotions connected to guilt, pride, and responsibility. They're expected to recognize how choices affect others and practice ethical decision making and accountability. California's transformative social emotional learning framework emphasizes self-awareness, ethical self-management, social awareness through empathy, and relationship skills rooted in trust and repair. Additionally, the history social science framework introduces fairness, responsibility, and moral reasoning beginning in kindergarten, reinforcing honesty as a civic and personal value rather than a rule enforced by fear. Moving on to the state of Texas. So in Texas, honesty and integrity are directly addressed through the health education and character education outcomes in grades K through 2. Students learn to identify honest behavior, understand consequences of dishonesty, and practice responsible decision making. And that is 115.2 through 115.3. Okay. By grades 3 to 5, students are taught to evaluate ethical dilemmas, demonstrate personal responsibility, and practice empathy when they're actions affect others. So these frameworks emphasize accountability, trustworthiness, and moral courage, helping students develop integrity not just as a behavior compliance, but as an internalized value that guides choices at school, home, and in relationships. So again, I think when it comes to curriculum, a lot of times you will see these very broad pictures. We want children to be honest. We want them to be responsible. We want them to be caring and kind, with no direction on how. What is the curriculum to back the requirement? What are the lesson plans? What are the videos? What are the articles? And that for me is consistently missing across both states, California as well as Texas. There isn't a lot of the how this is going to be taught. More so, this is what I want these students to be able to learn. So I always say if something is important to you, to make sure that you are teaching it and bringing it into your day-to-day lives with the child so that they truly get it and understand it. Because just because it is based or a rule in the curriculum does not mean that child is actually going to pick up that information. There are developmental differences. That child doesn't always understand how their teacher teaches. So much more. Okay. So if it's important to you, you be that educator. Let's keep growing. Resources. Here are a few resources that might help your child learn to tell the truth. Okay. The first is, y'all know I love a Sesame Street. So a Sesame Street in communities, they have an honesty and responsibility. They have an honesty and responsibility component. And on this website, you're going to find short videos, principles, and caregiver guides that model truth-telling, accountability, and repairing mistakes in developmentally appropriate ways. The next resource we're going to discuss is called Character Strong Honesty Lessons for Kids, and that's characterstrong.com. This is going to offer simple discussion prompts and family activities discussed on integrity, empathy, and ethical decision making. Okay, so they're going to give some examples, some scenario questions, and just overall, it's a great tool to be able to have your child make better decisions. The next website you have heard a few times, and that is going to be learningforjustice.org. Now, Learning for Justice provides classroom ready resources and family guides on fairness, responsibility, and moral courage. So they have a lot about honesty. They have a lot about diversity. They just have a lot in general. Okay. Definitely want to check that out and check out some of the articles available on there. The next resource I am going to prompt you to is specifically if you have younger children, I would say 8 years old and younger, check out PBS Kids Social Emotional Learning Resources. I love PBS Kids. And this resource, pbs.org/parents, is going to offer games and videos that reinforce honesty and empathy through accountability and storytelling and play. Okay, so definitely check that out. The next resource is going to be from Greater Good Science Center, UC Berkeley. Now, greatergood.berkeley.edu is going to offer research-based articles and parenting tools that explain how honesty, moral courage, and ethical decision-making develop in children with practical strategies rooted in empathy rather than punishment. So I really like this because I think so often children lie because they're scared they're going to get in trouble. And so I feel like this resource is a good kind of overall guide to help you to parent in a way in which your child is not necessarily scared of consequences and they value truth over telling that lie. The next one is from Harvard Graduate School of Education. They have a Making Caring Common resource. This is going to be mcc.gse.harvard.edu. That's a lot of dots. And this is an evidence-driven guidance on raising ethical children, focusing on integrity, responsibility, and honesty through everyday family interactions and adult modeling. The next resource is going to be character.org, and this is a national authority on character education offering vetted lessons, family guides, and school frameworks that explicitly teach honesty, trustworthiness, and overall integrity. This is a solid one. I would also check this out if you're an educator, a teacher, or a counselor of some sort. The next one is going to be for our littles. This resource is 0 to 3 social emotional development. 0to3.org. This is going to offer clear, developmentally appropriate resources explaining how honesty and conscience, okay, form in early childhood. You're going to feel bad if you lie to me, okay? This is going to have language that adults can use to hold conversations with their child. It's also going to have direct resources for children. And the last resource I am going to discuss for now, but of course, if you want more, you already know, go to my website, scroll all the way down till you get to the bottom, give me your email, and in exchange, I will give you a newsletter with additional resources, okay? But for now, we're going to wrap it up with Child Mind Institute, Lying and Truth Telling. That's childmind.org. This is clinically informed explanations of why children lie. Because we always be like, what you lying for? What you? This is going to help to answer that question when it's developmentally normal and how to respond in ways that build integrity instead of anxiety or shame. So check that one out. That one is to help you to be able to help them. Best practices at home. I completely understand the frustration around having children lie to you. I think for a lot of us educators and parents, anybody who works with children, we take it very personally when they lie to us, right? Like, what you think I'm stupid? Like, I already know the answer. There was a lot of that. And I think the first best practice is to understand that them lying does not necessarily have anything to do with you. It might mean they don't trust you. It might mean that they're struggling with honesty in general. Children lie for so many reasons. Like the reasons in which, one, sometimes children lie for imagination. Some children just lie because they're bored. They want to make up a story. They want to find a way to have a conversation with you, okay? And instead of them finding a good way to enter into the conversation, they make something up. Children lie for connection. You ever see a child and, you hear them with other children and they're all talking about this video game and he's like, yeah, I have that video game too and I love to play it. And you're like, I ain't bought you that video game. You do not have that video game. And you hear them trying to fit in and join conversation. They lie for that. They lie because they don't want to get in trouble. They lie because they think that if they tell the truth, they'll be in more trouble than just lying. They lie for so many reasons. As adults, we lie. Think about the last thing you lied about. And if you say you never lie, you will lie. Okay. So it is in humans to lie. What you're trying to do is get your child to understand that I have to be a person that you're honest with. Because if you're not honest with me, then I cannot protect you. Okay. If you're not honest with me, then we cannot have a relationship built in trust. If you're not honest with me, then I can't support you. You want to break down the reason as to why you need them to have some honesty and integrity specifically with you. If that child is honest with one person, we're off to a great start. If they have one trusted adult or resource to where they will tell the truth about what happened at school, what happened with another teacher, what happened with another adult, why they stole what they stole, whatever. If they have just one, we're already way ahead of the game because most children lie to everybody for various reasons. So the first best practice is to remove yourself to understand that it's not because they think you're stupid. It has more to do with them and how they're communicating right now than it has to do with you. The next best practice is to make sure that that child has one person to where they're able to be honest with. They feel like they can come forward with the truth and that person. The next best practice is for them to understand why you need them to tell the truth. That's why I like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's such a basic story, but the concept is solid, okay? If the child does not understand something, it is harder for them to do it. If they don't know the point of wearing shoes, they are less likely to want to wear shoes, to have a desire to wear shoes. It is important, it is crucial that children have buy-in to whatever it is you're trying to teach them, all right? Now, when it comes to honesty and when it comes to integrity, explaining to them the why is going to get us way ahead. Now, you got different types of kids, okay? You have Children who lie without thinking. And that means I didn't even know I was lying because I lie so much. And with those children, constant redirection and communication is going to be crucial. So I'll go back to my example. You hear your child in a circle with other children talking about video games, and your child says, hey, I have that game too, and this is what I like about that game. And you know they don't have that game. You're not going to embarrass them. You're going to pull them to the side and you're going to say, hey, you ain't got that game. Don't be telling the kids you got that game, but you do have this game. Okay, you do have Star Wars Deluxe 3, whatever, and you can go talk about that game that you have. You give them an out. You give them another option. You redirect them and you let them know how they can still be a part of community and conversation without lying. You let them know you don't even have that gaming system, but you can let them know that you're excited to try it, or one day maybe you can do a play date and you can try it. You give them other options. You got to give options. They don't know. They're learning. They're growing. And if adults lie at their big age, at our big age, even as it's as simple as how you doing good, knowing you depressed and down bad, then children also struggle with it as well. Okay. So redirect. The next is if that child tells you the truth without you finding out. What does that mean? They went to school, they stole some out of somebody's lunch pail. You got an email about it, but you have not quite talked to them about it yet. You sit down with them and you say, hey, I'm just wondering how school was today. And they just come out and say, you know what? I stole them cookies out that girl lunch pail and I know I shouldn't have did it. And they're straightforward. We're not going to punish them for that. Why? Why would you not punish them? They didn't stole. Stealing is wrong. Stealing is wrong. But what you're doing is you are letting them know that there is value in them telling the truth. Now, children, just like older humans, can manipulate anything. But if that child struggles to be forthcoming with the truth and they bring it to you, baby, that is the celebration. That is the joy, because that was their consequence. Integrity and honesty and speaking up after struggling to do so is the consequence. And stealing is only the other side of lying. It is another form of dishonesty and deception. So if we are getting them to get that out, that is a yay. We're not about to curse them out. We ain't finna whip on them. We ain't finna yell at them. No. We're going to thank them for being honest. Then we're going to connect. I remember when I stole such and such. But then I also remember how she felt looking for her phone, looking for whatever it was. And I remember how guilty I felt. Then the next step is now they have to face what it is that they did do. So no, they're not in trouble in the sense of grounded or, what have you, or these big responses. But you absolutely now need to go buy that baby a pack of cookies and acknowledge that you went up in a book bag. Because the other side of all of this is accountability. Why do we want children to be honest? A lot of it is around accountability in the decisions that they made. And that was a choice. I sent you with a lunch and you went and stole somebody else's anyway. That was a choice. So now with your money out of your piggy bank, if you ain't got no piggy bank, you ain't got no money, you're going to work to earn that money. You're going to go buy them some cookies and you're going to go have a conversation. And I don't know what the school is going to do. I don't know what the result or the consequence from the school will be. Here, I appreciated you telling me the truth, and this is how we're going to handle it. But that does not mean that that person will forgive you. And that does not mean that you will not have consequences coming from the school. That is going to teach your child young that even when they do make wrong choices, at any given point, they can put an end to it. They can go try to correct that wrong. They can have some integrity and some accountability around telling the truth. I would also let them know, don't that feel better? You walking around with a million lies? Doesn't it feel better to release that, to let that go? So I have to carry that all the time. Now, on the flip side of this, I started this off by saying sometimes your child lying, and it's not because they don't trust you. It's just because they just be lying all the time. There are situations to where your child is lying because they don't trust you. I'm going to let you know right now, if your child comes to you and they say, hey, mom, I broke the mug, your favorite mug. And they come to you and they tell you that instead of sweeping it up and trying to throw it away and hide it. And you say, what, you broke my, blah, 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 blah. You think they finna keep coming to you, telling you what they know? You're going to have to find them. You're going to have to catch them because your reaction and your response is terrifying. So you going to have to catch me. I'm not finna just sit up here and volunteer getting yelled at and fussed at and cursed at and all of that, because it would be easier for me to try to clean it up. You ain't thought about the mug anyway. You ain't thought about the cup. You're probably not going to see it. I'm going to just do that. So when that child is forthcoming, make sure that you are receptive to that information. The next best practice is, I want you to try, if you have a child that is consistently lying, an activity that I call the mirror exercise. I do it with various students. And that is, if you're at home at the end of their day, you're going to have them stand in front of a full body mirror. And in front of that full body mirror, they are going to say the things that they're proud of in that day. And they're also going to share the things that they are not proud of. What are the things that they have shame around, embarrassment around, the things they knew they didn't have no business doing? You're going to have them look themselves in the eye to express some of those things. And here's what I see happen. I see in the beginning, children have a very hard time looking at themselves. It's one thing to lie to somebody else. It's a whole other thing to be lying to yourself, okay? And I feel in the beginning that a lot of children have a hard time just looking themselves in the eye. So as they're speaking, you're going to remind them to make eye contact. Look at yourself, look at yourself, look at yourself. You're also going to remind them as they're reflecting on their day to talk about their part. Well, Johnny hit me and this person did this, so then I said that. We're going to remove whatever was done and focus on what you did. I made the decision to throw my backpack. I made the decision to walk out of class. I made the decision to steal them cookies. Clearly, I got a sweet tooth, because the way this keep being my example, I made the decision. We're going to put the focus of the decisions back on that child. That's what we're going to do. Because with that, you are now building a muscle, and that muscle is going to help us raise children who have more integrity, because we need them to see their actions. We need them to see the result of their actions. You threw a ball at somebody and hit them, and then you went along about your merry little day just fine. No, you need to go and look at yourself and say, I decided to hurt somebody today. You don't just get to keep rolling through life, causing issues, hurting people, and it's not being addressed. So the mirror exercise helps children to see themselves, even in school. A situation takes place, and before you get to restorative justice practices, which I love that, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, you can start by having that child look themselves in the mirror. Okay, what happened? And you'll see them look away. No, look at yourself. What happened? Because again, there is something about seeing yourself that really helps you to come out with that truth. Now, sidebar, restorative justice practices. If you have a conflict between two children, restorative justice practices is very helpful, because the whole point of the practice is for that child to understand and ultimately empathize with the other person's point of view. Okay, so it is a lot of back and forth on what was happening and how I interpreted what was taking place. The example I give is that there were two students, and one student had a nickname for another student. Okay, we'll call them student A and student B. I'm sleepy, bear with me. Student A had a problem with student B, but student B didn't realize that. So student B continued with this nickname, okay? And student B's mind, they're friends. And so student B is like this nickname over and over and over and over and over again. And student A, a child who usually don't have no problem, hauls off and hits him. Student A hits student B for calling him that same nickname that he's been calling him all year. Now, when they sit down for the restorative justice part of this all, student B is like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Why would you hit me? We're friends. And student A is like, you keep calling me this nickname and I don't like it. And student B is like, I only call you that name because we're friends. All of my friends have nicknames. So they both understand the other person's point of view. One student understands that you don't get to just choose what to call somebody. They had a name. Their name was given to them. They might even have a nickname that everybody calls them. But if you want to change that name as a term of endearment, you need to make sure it's okay with them. And the other student realized that socially speaking, for this child, in terms of what is culturally normal, a nickname is a term of endearment. And so they're both able to understand each other's perspective and point of view. That is restorative justice, when you can get the child to see the other person. So going back to that same example of stealing cookies, how do you think they felt when they've been waiting all day for their snack and it was no longer there? What harm did you cause? And doing that while having them watch themselves, it helps. Okay, those are some best practices. Overall, accountability is going to be crucial. Building that relationship of trust with your child, or making sure that they have a person to where they can trust and be honest, letting them have the accountability be that consequence. So having to restore your mistake, having to restore the trust that's been broken, that by itself is huge and major, and really watching your responses. All of these help, but don't just let your baby lie. Don't get to a point to where you're so exhausted that you just because you're like, I'm over it. Because if you don't shine a light on them, they will think that they're getting away with lying. And like anything, it can become addictive. So make sure that you are correcting in a way that's, reaffirming and loving, but still a redirection to encourage your child to be honest and to tell the truth, because it's hard. It is very difficult. And most people struggle with being authentic, with being their honest selves and their true selves. So have a little bit of grace, but have a lot of consistency. Let's keep growing. When to seek help. One, I would say, is if you have a habitual liar, you have a child that cannot seem to find the truth. Simple things, very, very simple things. Do you like the color green? Yeah, I love it. They really hate the color green. Very simple things, because a lot of times what's happening is that child is lying to fit in. They're lying to avoid getting in trouble. They're trying to find their own identity and what it is they really enjoy. And if they don't get some intervention and some support, it's only going to get worse. Okay, so even me with my students, as they lie, I'm redirecting, and I don't embarrass them. I don't need to say it in front of the whole classroom, but I definitely need to let them know that I clocked it, because I don't want this to turn into a habit of yours. And so if you have a habitual liar, if you have a child or a student that you think is a narcissist, if you think that there's some sort of other personality disorder going on, or just overall concerned around how often and how frequent and how unnecessary the lies are, I would go get a second, third, fourth opinion. I would go to the doctor and get my child evaluated and see if there's something else going on. I would go to the guidance counselor and say, I cannot get the truth from them. I don't even know what personality is theirs because they lie so often. I would be honest myself with where we are in this process of getting you to tell the truth. And I would get some additional support. Go to your guidance counselors. Get a therapist if appropriate. Talk to your medical doctor and get that child the intervention services that they need, because there is a difference between normal lying and children figuring out their voice or being scared of fear, and children now incapable of telling the truth because you don't even know what the truth is anymore. Go get them some help. Common questions. What should the consequences be for lying? So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but my favorite type of consequence is what's called natural consequences. Now, what is a natural consequence? I asked you if you cleaned your room. You told me, yeah, it's now time to leave out for a birthday party, and I check your room and it's not clean. Baby, you're not going to the birthday party. That's a natural consequence because it was directly correlated to you missing the thing you wanted as a result of you not doing what you said you were going to do. Okay. Now, what an unnatural consequence would be, I told you to clean your room. You didn't clean your room. It's now time to go to the birthday party. So now you can't play video games for a week. The video games have absolutely nothing to do with the thing that I asked you to do, the thing that you said that you did, nor the birthday party that you want to go to. Those are unnatural consequences. Okay. Most of us do unnatural consequences. Most of us get so angry and frustrated. We be like, no, nothing ever for a month. Natural consequences, though, help the child understand that my actions, I did that, resulted in me missing out on what it was that I desired to do. Okay. So in terms of consequences, go natural as often as possible. Sometimes you can't go natural, but when you can, choose a natural consequence and then get that child to verbalize or write or some way to communicate why it is that they're missing that birthday party. That is already a huge consequence. I talked earlier about the consequence of being honest after lying. If you've ever had that feeling where you've been holding on to a lie or a secret and then you finally tell the truth, that itself is very difficult. Okay. And as I was saying earlier, sometimes you don't have a punishment for them or what have you, but the person that they harm does have a consequence for them, or that school that they took from does have a consequence. So you can't always protect them from punishments. And I would also let my child know that stealing or whatever it is they did, as they get older, you will go to jail. You can't haul off and hit nobody in their head and think it'll be okay. That's called battery. That's assault. Okay, I would explain to them that as you get older, the consequences and those punishments do get worse because there are different expectations. And so really allowing your child being forthcoming and allowing them to go through the experience of telling the truth and taking accountability for that truth is going to be a lot of the consequence. I'm not the firm believer that you just got to hurt, punch down, again, that goes now into breaking that trust. So that's what I recommend. And the last question I am going to address, what if my child is lying to protect somebody else? I would explain to them that I am their parent. I am their safe person, and whatever it is that you're holding on to, you can let me know. And then I would analyze that situation. This is why I was saying earlier under best practices that child needs one person they can be honest with so that they don't have a false sense of loyalty, so that they don't feel obligated to lie for people. Because if you have that one person, they can go and they can share whatever the issue is, whatever they're hiding with that person, and then it can be addressed from there. But I would explain to them that you have to be honest because I can't help you. I can't help them if I don't fully know what's going on. And that also bleeds into secrets. Children do not need secrets. And we have a whole week on consent that also addresses this. It's not necessary. Unless it's grandma's 89th surprise birthday party, there needs to not be no surprises. What's up? What's going on? And making sure that they understand that and that they feel safe and comfortable talking to you about the situation is going to go a long way. It's a lot. Babies lie all the time. Having different ways that they can communicate is helpful in telling the truth. Having a child write instead of verbalize their frustration or whatever it is that they're lying about, sometimes it's more helpful. Having them draw or take the approach of art instead of writing, sometimes it's more helpful. Having them talk to a different adult, an aunt, a cousin, a therapist. Sometimes they're so fed up with you, you can't get the truth out of them, period, because y'all are just into it and there's a lot of friction and anger there. So having another adult can sometimes help with that as well. Sometimes that's mentorship. Sometimes that's a community leader or somebody who can spend some extra time. Sometimes it's a guidance counselor. But overall, you might not be the person that your child is willing to speak to or be honest too, and they still need a person. Okay. So there is a lot there to unpack. This topic is major, and this is a topic that so many parents struggle with. And I would say to keep going. Understand that your child lying does not mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they'll be like this forever. What it means is they need help understanding why they need to be honest, and sometimes they need supports to help them to get there. Whew, that was a mouthful. I think the last thing that I want to add is that there is a such thing as lying for survival and code switching that I will say is sometimes necessary. Okay. That is a whole nother lesson. But your child needs to understand how other people will receive the information they're trying to share. They need to understand how the world views them, and they need to understand when lying is necessary to protect themselves. But if you are not lying to protect yourself, if you're not in a situation of danger or of harm or something like that, right? You're at a birthday party, they're smoking weed, and then you lie and say you have asthma or some sort of medical condition so that you don't have to smoke. That's a lie we accept. Okay. So having your child understand that lying for survival is okay, lying to get out of a situation, those are very different things than you stealing because you wanted something that didn't belong to you, than you lying about the day that you've had, or changing your grades on a report card, or whatever deception. Those are two different things. Now, I think I am done for now. I thank you for learning with me, for growing with me, for being part of this book loving community. If you have any tips or resources about lying and telling the truth, please drop it in the comments below. As hopefully you know, I am an author and illustrator of multiple books, and I encourage you to go check those beautiful hardcover books out. Those books encourage something called the Empathy Library, because I realized that so many of the families that I was writing for and children that I was writing for come from backgrounds where $20 is just way too much for a book. So we created this pay it forward program called the Empathy Library. You donate what you can, and those funds purchase books to get to children in need. Okay. Now they're special because the books are tailored to that child, their interest and their identity, which I just think is so awesome. Thank you for being here. And until next time, remember to enjoy the moment or go be a joy in the moment. Bye.